next speaker is Dr. Zina Semenovskaya. Dr. Zina is an attending at St. Joseph's Medical Center, clinical faculty there. And she's also the founder of the Conservation and Wilderness Medicine Conference and is a consultant physician with several telemedicine health companies such as K-Health and Curai. She'll be discussing some tips and tricks to nail your interviews. Over to Dr. Zina.
All right, thank you so much. As I said, I have a massive slide deck put together by somebody else. I'm kind of a last minute substitute in here and only 15 minutes. So I'm just gonna kind of run through the slides real quick and throw in my own pieces of advice, but feel free just to shout out if you have any questions. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Okay. All right, and a lot of these are also pre-COVID advice. So things like interview dinners and stuff that I think, I don't know, that we've been doing this year. So something else to keep in mind. Okay, so the interview, it's not as scary as it sounds. I agree with that. Still sounds scary. I don't know who here is scared of interviews. I would say by the time you get to the point that you're interviewing for a job in emergency medicine, you know, you're a professional, they're a professional. They've screened your CV. They're probably just making sure that you're not a serial killer and can generally fit in with what they're looking for. And you're also interviewing them to see, you know, if they fit with what you're looking for. So it's a two-way street. Yeah, so that's it. Social skills, team player. They also want to sell the department to you. I know this has been said before by other people during this conference that it kind of feels like the Hunger Games this past year in emergency medicine. It feels like there's not enough jobs. People are going without jobs. Everyone's panicking. I don't think you need to panic. I think you absolutely will find a job. You'll find the job that works for you. It might not be the first, second, or third job that you get, but you will get there. You know, you're still a highly trained professional. You're still very marketable. I think it was a bit of a temporary dip. And even now I'm starting to see a resurgence in random emails I'm getting from recruiters, you know, looking to put me in to various positions. So don't panic. Don't jump at the very first job that comes along at you. You know, make sure it's a good fit for you too. So this is sort of pre-COVID. I don't know if people are still doing a lot of these bar restaurants night before group meetings, but if you do go to one, definitely don't drink too much, not get drunk. This is not a place for you to party and tell anecdotes from when you were in college in a frat. You know, this is really a time for you to be professional and you know, kind of feel out the group. So have a drink, but just hold the drink. Try not to drink the drink. Okay, so we were talking about not getting wasted the night before and not telling anecdotes about your time in a frat. I think that's pretty good. So the day of, you know, definitely get there early. Make sure you know, are able to park. Keep in mind that it might be construction parking, still really kind of common sense stuff, you know, but definitely don't try to get there at the last minute. Make sure you know, give yourself at least an extra half hour to an hour to get there. It's always better to be early than to be late. If you're going to be late, I promise it's not going to go over very well. Always be really respectful towards everybody. You know, the second you get out of your vehicle or the subway, you don't know who you're going to be interacting with. You know, that random person that was sitting next to you at the subway that you were rude to, you know, might be the administrator's spouse or might be another resident or attending at that hospital, you know. So you should never be rude to people in general, of course, but really make sure that you're polite to absolutely everybody around you because you're, you know, considered just being interviewed the entire time. So yeah, you're not powerless. Like I said, I know it kind of feels like the Hunger Games recently, but really, you know, you don't have to take the very first job that comes your way. This goes both ways. If it's not a good fit for you, either personality-wise or schedule-wise or something else, you're going to be miserable. You don't want to be miserable. You also don't want to be in a position where you end up job hopping every couple of months. That's not going to look great on your CV. You really ideally want to stay in a job for at least a year before you switch. And so, you know, if a place doesn't feel like a good fit, keep looking. Topics, you know, kinds of questions they might ask you. You guys are all pros at interviewing. You interviewed for college, med school, residencies. I've had everything from normal questions, you know, like, what are you looking for? What's your 5-year plan? To wacky questions like, what's your theme song? That always kind of threw me off. So, you know, I would sort of think about a couple of wacky answers that you can provide if you care about that. So that they know. Do some research on the program. I think that's a really good piece of advice so they know that you're actually interested in their department. I've actually interviewed sometimes resident, you know, people applying for residency at St. Joe's who ask questions that are actually not about our department. And I'm like, wait, we don't have that. And they're like, oh, sorry, I was thinking about a different hospital. So clearly they're not well prepared. They're not focused. And that does not reflect well. So make sure that you know, come up with a couple of questions that you want to ask. Maybe they even already kind of know the answer to, but that makes sense. There's a lot of mention here about like legal and illegal questions. Keep in mind, people, they can't ask you illegal questions, right? Like they can't ask you, I'm going to kind of skip through this, but they can't ask you questions about, your sexual orientation, whether you're married and whether you're having kids and things like that. They really can't. They're not supposed to, but they'll find other ways of potentially asking you that. They might be having a really social conversation with you and they see that you're wearing a wedding ring and they might be like, oh, that's a really beautiful ring, or something like that. And then like, kind of pull you into this discussion. And if you bring it up yourself, if you're like, oh, thanks, my husband got this for me, on our 5th anniversary or something after I had my 18th child, now they know that you have 18 children. And so keep in mind that, if you reveal information or you bring up a topic, they absolutely can go ahead and ask about it. So if you don't want to discuss your LGBT involvement with them, but it's, prime and right up there on your CV, it might come up because you've basically brought up the topic. So keep in mind these questions are illegal, but they'll find ways to ask. So if there's anything that you think that you have in your history that maybe would be concerning to them, like for example, I'm massively pregnant, it'd be really hard for them not to know that I'm massively pregnant if I interviewed right now. And so if they were worried that I might need to take maternity leave really soon, that could be a big red flag. So just be prepared to address those issues if they come up. Yeah, and just standard response if you're a member of an underrepresented group, or if there's a red flag, like if you have 4 children and you think this might come up, and you think there might be some concern about how much flexibility you need, or whether you have childcare, or whether you're available to take sick call, just have an answer prepared to be reassuring about it. Okay, so major factors considering a new hire. You'll see here that this purple graph, personality fit of the group. I really think that's key. I think just like applying for residency or anything else, when you go through, you kind of see the department, you interview the department, you'll get a sense for whether you fit in or not, and they'll get a sense about whether you'll fit in or not. But sometimes it's not immediately obvious, and you won't figure it out until you've been working there for a couple of months. I remember when I interviewed for residencies, I had this rule. It's called the coffee rule. I made it up for myself, but basically the idea was that as I walked through the department, they give you like a tour of the ER. I would basically look around and see if anybody was drinking coffee, like any of the physicians or nurses or anybody. And if they were, where those coffee cups were, meaning where they're just kind of like out and about, people are drinking coffee as they're charting, or are those cups like hidden, in drawers somewhere because everyone's afraid of Jaco, or were they just not around at all? And to me, the reason why that was important is not because I'm totally obsessed with coffee, but because, a little bit, but mostly was important because it gave me a sense for the culture of the department and how strict everybody was. If everyone was wearing the same monogrammed scrubs and like has their hair up and like, there's no coffee cups to be seen, that I know that they're very strict and kind of serious. Whereas if it's more relaxed, kind of more county style department, everyone has their coffee and water bottles out and are wearing whatever they feel is professional but is comfortable for them. That was a more relaxed vibe, a more relaxed style, and that fit more what I was looking for. And that gave me a bigger sense of the culture of the department. So that was my coffee rule. It may or may not work for you. You might want the total opposite of what I was looking for. But things like that are something to keep in mind. Other things here that I mentioned, academic credentials. I spoke to a couple of people today who were looking for academic jobs specifically, but were having trouble getting callbacks. I think these days, because the market is somewhat saturated, if you're not fellowship trained and don't have a very specific academic niche, it might be a little bit harder to get hired in an academic department. So if that's what you're looking for, make sure that your academic credentials, are front and center. So this is about which fellowships are most in demand. I think this is maybe okay. I don't know. I know that, ultrasound and SIM are really, really popular fellowships. They're all over the country. A lot of people are fellowship trained in them. Don't assume that just because you did a fellowship, you're automatically going to get, an academic position or an academic position with protected hours to do ultrasound or do SIM. That may not be the case, but maybe it helps get your foot in the door. Obviously, if you're looking to work in an academic pediatric ER, PDM fellowship is helpful. So yeah, I think, I've been asked this question, like, what's your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan? I think this is a really nebulous question. I think it's good to think about it and have a bit of an answer, maybe that fits with this particular department that you're applying to. Like, don't tell them that you want to run a SIM fellowship when you haven't done a SIM fellowship yourself and it's a community hospital, so have something that's congruent with what you're applying to. Maybe don't be overly specific, but I think also saying like, I don't know, I just kind of want to hang out and make money is probably not the best answer either. So do think in advance what kind of questions they would ask. I always ask myself, like if I was interviewing, what are the top 10, 15 questions I might ask? And I have answers for those for myself. So we just have 2 minutes left to go. Emotional intelligence. I think that's really hard to teach. I think you kind of either have it or you don't, but you can maybe fake it until you make it. Try to read the room. If the other person is talking a lot, try not to interrupt. If they seem really kind of reserved and quiet, try not to be, overly exuberant, and also vice versa. But again, just remember, it's all about the fit. It's okay not to fit with every job, with every department. It's okay to be yourself and to understand that, hey, not every group, not every practice setting is going to be right for you. Tiffany and I chat all the time about how I joke I'd probably be fired from Kaiser, because I'm just like not a Kaiser person. I'm very much this community kind of county med person. That's my personality that works for me. And I know that about myself, and that's perfectly okay. You have to just know yourself and know where you fit in, and don't necessarily try to put, yourself where you don't work. Have humility, have good energy, try not to, boast a ton about yourself or talk a lot about yourself the entire time. Ask questions of the department, make sure you're peer interested. If they ask you, hey, do you have any questions? Don't just look at them blankly and say, nope, I'm good. Have something intelligent to say and ask about. Have passion for the mission, deeply personal angles. I think that's all good. Again, I think I would just stress, the idea that you want to be genuine, you want to be passionate, but you don't want to be kind of over the top where people are exhausted by you either. Just try to strike that balance. And then, trying to request prince or princess treatment. Again, I think this is variable. I think if you are offering something to them, they might be able to offer you something in return. I was a nocturnist for 2 years at an academic program in Manhattan, primarily because I really wanted to have flexibility. And so I said, I'll do all nights. And in exchange, they let me pretty much make my schedule. I just told them I want to work the following dates next month. And that's what I was scheduled for. Whereas when I was working, if I was only going to work days, they would not give me the same kind of flexibility. And so again, if you want special treatment or you need special treatment for some reason because of childcare issues, or you're commuting from another state or something else like that, be upfront about it. I think you don't want to accept the job, but then realize that what you need is not something that they can provide, and now you're in a bad situation. Be upfront and honest, but be willing to offer something in return. Let's see. So yes, do your homework prior to the interview and make sure you're actually asking questions that are relevant to the position, to the hospital where you're applying. Nothing sends up a red flag, like asking inappropriate questions, obvious, very basic questions that you should really have just gleaned from looking at the website of the hospital, and questions that are actually about a different hospital, different program. And just try to have answers, personal answers to commonly asked questions that you can anticipate in advance. Everyone's going to ask you, why do you want to work in our hospital? Do you have family or other personal ties to the city or this region? Are you looking to work nights, weekends, days? Those kinds of things are all really obvious questions. So just have answers to them. And of course, that ubiquitous, what's your 5-10-year plan? Have something to say. If you have any red flags on your application or just anything unusual, maybe you speak a language that is not common, or you've done research in a specific field, or you just put you're paragliding with goats on your CV, be prepared to talk about that. If you don't want to talk about it, don't put it in there. So if there's stuff that's maybe controversial about you or weird or just something that you don't really want to address, take it out of your CV. You don't have to, this is not, you're not meeting with your best friend for coffee for 12 hours. Just, really curate your CV so that you're presenting the specific kind of front and the specific kind of person that you are to your interviewer without going overboard and without putting yourself in an awkward position. So if you don't want to talk about your children, do not put that you have, 5 children on your CV. Just leave it out and it won't come up. And practice. I think if you have a friend or a spouse or somebody that's willing to sit down with you for a little bit and ask you a bunch of questions and just practice, kind of your mannerisms, how you're sitting, do that. Another thing I just want to mention is, if you have a specific habit, like I have a habit, if my hair is down, I start playing with my hair. It's very distracting. And so I know that about myself. So if I'm going into an interview or other professional situation, I guess, sorry, today excluded, I generally put my hair up. Because that's why I know that I'm definitely not going to touch it. It's not going to become an issue. So if there's something like a tick or something else that you think that you do, just try to present yourself in a way that you avoid doing those things. That's probably the last personal thing I have to say. Oh yeah, if you speak a language, make sure you can speak it. So this is actually really great advice from Dr. Oakes. When I was applying for residency, I had put down Spanish on my CV, and I specifically put down medical Spanish because I'm not fluent in Spanish, but I can get through a medical interview. And one of my interviewees was like, "Oh, so I see you speak Spanish." And before she could even finish that thought, because I knew where she was going with this, I was like, yes, I speak medical Spanish. And I busted out, hi, sir, I'm Dr. Zina. Do you have a problem with your liver? Do you have a problem with your gallbladder? Have you been vomiting for a couple of days? I just busted out with like 10 phrases. And she laughed and was like, oh, that's really good. And then we left it there. But God forbid she had tried to engage me in a conversation about traveling to Mexico or something, I probably would have been in big trouble. So be very careful about listing skills that are testable that you do not actually have. Don't put down that you can juggle, because your interviewer might be a juggler and pull out a bunch of balls out of their pocket, and now you're in big trouble if you don't really juggle. So be modest, understate your abilities, and definitely do not lie. Very important.